Hello and congratulations with your purchase of the AVer TR310 AI auto tracking camera. In today's video, we'll take a deeper dive and discuss some of the more advanced settings for the camera. We'll explain PoE plus power as far as how to connect that and what does that really mean. Putting the camera on the network, whether you're going to use DHCP or static IP addressing. Logging into the browser or the web UI with the correct browser is also important. And we have basically 9 separate topics we'll discuss today, and I'll show you those here on a slide in 1 minute. So as mentioned, today's video will be discussing the TR310 distance learning tracking camera. It has a USB 3.0 Type-C connection on the back of the camera. It has 2 auto tracking modes, supports up to 10 times optical zoom for excellent clarity, and it supports PoE plus, and it comes with a 3-year warranty. So in today's video, we'll be talking about the TR310 advanced configuration and some advanced options. So we'll basically 9 talking points. We'll explain PoE plus, putting the camera on the network, logging into the camera, controlling, navigating the camera using the web UI, saving, recalling presets either by the web UI or the camera remote, configuring the tracking modes for presenter and zone mode, turning on off the tracking via the remote or the web UI, how to do a factory reset using the web UI. Also, there might be an instance where you might need to do a factory reset with the camera remote. And then I'll explain a new PTZ Management Software from AVer, currently at version 8. Just showing the slide for a couple different bracket options for your installation of the camera. Really, the bottom 2 would most likely fit what you need, either ceiling mount or the AVer camera mount L-type for the wall. That is what the ceiling mount looks like, the PTMLT CM01. This does not come included with the TR310 camera. This would be a separate line item that you would have to add to complete the installation to the ceiling if you go with this bracket. And you also have a wall mount bracket that can be used in shelf mode, or if you're going to invert the camera, maybe put the camera up a little bit higher, you have the ability to invert the camera that way. Okay, so just real quick overview of a potential configuration. As mentioned, we can ceiling mount the camera, or your traditional either on a shelf in the back of the room or on a tripod, whatever your environment needs. This installation could be as simple as a 2-cable installation, one being the USB cable, right, going out, connecting from the camera out to a USB, and then connecting to your technology. You can step it down, so you could start out with a Type-C 3.0 and then use a 2.0 extender to a Type-A to your computer. That will work as well. As far as power, we could connect this camera with PoE plus. You would absolutely have to use a gigabit PoE plus switch in order for this to work. So just real quick, for those of you that may have never heard of this terminology, but a PoE plus switch, so there was originally a PoE switch, and then PoE plus just means that you can support more wattage and even more DC volts if needed. PoE plus in this situation, for this camera draws 18 watts. So I always recommend, for a quick and easy way to remember this, for your network admin person that's going to supply power from the switch, because some of these switches they have built-in intelligence where you can dial in what each port is supplying for wattage. So just 20 watts. So just remember 20 watts per port for each camera. So in this instance, if you're going to supply power to the camera via a PoE plus switch, it needs to be 20 watts, but it's also not only supplying power, but it's also data. So it's also being a network connection to your network. So in this scenario where we just unpacked the TR310 camera from the box, and you want to set it up to the network, there's a couple ways to do this, but the quickest way or the easiest way is to connect an HDMI cable to the TR310 and connect that to a monitor. And this will give you access to the on-screen display menu. I'll show you that here in a second. So you will notice on the remote of the camera, you will see the button labeled menu right here. So just press menu and it will bring up the on-screen display menu as shown here. So from here, we would go to network, where it says network. Then from there, you would go to DHCP, right? Go to DHCP, and then you can select either on or off. I have mine currently set to off because I'm setting my camera to a specific IP address. If you would just want to plug this in and have it pull an IP address from the DHCP server, you would then select on. Okay. But to actually see the IP address that it pulled, you would need to go down here to System, go over here to where it says Information, and this selection here for IP, that will show you the actual IP address that it pulled. So once you have that IP information, we can type this IP address into a web browser. Another thing to note, while you're here, and if you happen to know you're going to mount this to a ceiling, the image does need to be flipped. So you would access the on-screen display here, go to camera, and then down towards at the bottom, you have a couple options for mirror and flip. So here's where you would go to flip the image if you're mounting it to a ceiling. This is important for two things. One, obviously for the image to look correct, but number two, and more importantly, for the auto tracking to work properly. Some people have installed it without knowing to do this. The first thing they see obviously is the image, but then the tracking is like way out, and that's because everything's flipped upside down. So those are two things to kind of access while you're here. And then you could just hit menu again to exit the menu from the on-screen display. So once you have obtained that IP address, you would then be able to type that IP address in Google Chrome or IE11. With a new camera, the actual login is admin. Once you do that initial login, it will ask you to change that username password to something different. It is important that you write down what you put in. There have been instances where people have forgotten what they had just typed in, or maybe they hit another key unintentionally and they're not able to log in after they've changed it. But there's a way to get around that as well. we'll discuss later. So this is your landing page when you first log into the camera. So this is really good if you're able to obtain the IP address, type it into your web Chrome browser and pull it up and log in. That means you have network connectivity and things are looking pretty good. Just remember that Edge and Safari are not supported. So if you're using a Mac, the recommendation is to install Chrome for Mac. Okay, so at this point, you are able to, you have controls here, right? For simple panning left, panning right, zooming in, zooming out for your TR310. You have adjustments for pan speed and tilt speed. So if you feel the camera is not panning fast enough, you can adjust it, or if it's maybe a bit slow, you can adjust that as well. So presets, right? So we have up to 256 presets that are supported. So up to 256 presets are supported. There are a couple important ones. So as mentioned before, these cameras support presenter mode and zone mode. The presenter mode is just that. As the presenter is walking around, the camera will follow them wherever they may go and try to keep them centered to the image. In zone mode, we can create up to 4 different zones or blocks, and these are presets. So presets 6, 7, 8, and 9 are reserved for zone mode. I will say also in presenter mode, preset number 1 is important in the sense that that's going to be your starting area. So where the camera is going to start to look for someone to track when you enable tracking. So for preset number 1, you can either do it from this web UI that I'm showing, right? By simply positioning the camera. This could be the hello, good morning students, or the teacher's desk, a location where the teacher will be the majority of the time, or where they'd walk in the frame to actually start that tracking. So once you're satisfied with where it's at, you would just type in the number 1 and select save, and it'll save that preset. If the HDMI output is still connected, when you select save, you will have a message saying save preset number 1. That's true only if you have the on-screen display enabled. In your case, you may not want that enabled. So if you go to menu, I think it's under camera. Where am I at? Is it under advanced settings, video output? It's under system, and then here status on-screen display is set to on. So it gives me information like when a preset's saved, or when tracking is first enabled, or when it's first disabled. You may want that. I find it handy as a quick reference. Also, when you're zooming in or out, it shows you information as how much you've zoomed in or out. But you may not want that, and you can enable, disable as needed. So I thought I'd show that preset number 1. Another thing to keep in mind, so we can save preset number 1 either via the web UI or via the camera remote. So if you're doing this with the camera remote, the idea is the same in that you would use the arrow keys, right? Left, right, up and down for tilt. You can zoom in, zoom out, right? And then once you position it, the process, right, is to Number one, select your camera number one, as shown here. By default, the camera is set to number one. Okay, so you select number one. You would then press and hold the preset button. So right here is a preset button. You press and hold that, point the remote towards the camera, and then the number one at the same time. You should see a blink on the camera. The blue LED on the front of the camera should blink, and then release both buttons. So real quick, press and hold the preset button, the number one. You should see a blink on the camera, and then you know it's taken that information. A quick way to check that is to just move the camera to some other location, right? You just pan it over somewhere, and then press number one, and then it should go back to your preset number one that you just defined. Also, while we're talking about the remote, there are some quick access buttons for the auto tracking. So you have auto tracking on and off, and then we have a switch button, which I'll talk about here in a second. This, in presenter mode, the switch button allows you to switch who the camera is following. Also, the remote requires two AAA batteries that are not supplied with the camera. So you're going to need two AAA batteries as well. Okay. So PTZ Management Software, this is new from AVer. We're currently at version 8 beta. But this PTZ Management Software allows you to quickly at a glance take a look at your cameras on the network. This only works with cameras that are on the network. So it allows you the ability to actually select a camera, and you could call up a preset, check the status of the camera. We can allow up to 128 separate cameras per console and up to 100 different users. So users being either admin rights or user rights. And you have pan, tilt, zoom control of the cameras. On the TR310 cameras, you have the ability to enable, disable the tracking, and then also change the different modes of the TR310. So whether it's presenter or zone. Currently, it's Windows-based only, but we are working on a Mac version. Okay, just real quick here, show you how the kind of step-by-step process of the camera remote configuration. And the same would be true whether it's preset 1, preset 6, preset 7, preset 8. Really, it's steps 4 through 8, right, is the meat of it. Some facts about the TR310, 10x optical zoom. Okay. So let's talk a little more about the web interface. Okay. So once you log in, here's your network information, tracking settings. So let me flip to here real quick. So the TR310 offers two tracking modes, presenter and zone. But within presenter, there's a feature called click to track. And you can use this either via the web UI or the remote control. So in the web UI, I'll show you here in a second, you would actually see a person, you would see a person in a red box, which indicates who the camera is tracking. And let's say we had a special guest speaker and I walk up and give a little 1-minute intro, And then as they walk up, I could then just click on that second person, and then they would turn into the red box, and then I could walk off stage without the camera following me. You can do the same thing via the remote control, shown here, the remote control. There's a button called switch. So via the remote control, you would just select the button switch, and that would switch who the camera's looking at right there. Also, we have zone mode, so we can create either 2, 3, or 4 separate zones. And these are the presets mentioned before. So preset 6, 7, 8, and 9 are reserved for this function. Again, you have up to 256 separate presets for the camera, but really preset 1, you want to kind of reserve that for your main home position, right? And then presets 6, 7, 8, and 9 are used for zone tracking. So we're back here. Again, presenter and zone modes, right? So here's presenter mode. So in here we have a setting for tracking sensitivity. It's either a 1, a 2, or a 3. And in my environment, a 2 is fine. But let's say maybe the lighting was a little bit darker. It's kind of harder to catch the image of the human body. That's what this the AI auto tracking algorithm is based on. It's actually looking for a human outline. So it's looking for a head, shoulders, torso as I walk about the room. And it's not going to care about anything else that's going on in the background. Or if someone were to walk in front of me, it would not interfere with tracking me. So that's presenter. So maybe the light's a little bit low. Maybe it's hard to see that outline. So maybe we'd crank this up to number 3 for sensitivity. Or maybe there's a lot of noise in the background in the sense of a lot of human images, right? Maybe it's picking up a lot of them. Um, you can maybe put this at 1. But for me, in this environment, 2 works fine. Time to return a tracking point, it's set to 5 seconds. So what this means is as I'm being followed, if I were to walk out of the room, the camera will sit and wait. If after 5 seconds it doesn't see me come back in, the camera will return to preset number 1. So it will go to here, preset number 1, and it will kind of sit and wait for someone to kind of show up in that frame, in that preset. People size, what this is, I have this set to is to half. I have a table in front of me, so really the camera's only going to see half of me. And realistically, in most K-12 classrooms, there's going to be some tables and chairs and whatnot. So half would probably be where you would be selecting. But full is there, so if you had a full view of the presenter, say there's a little 2-foot riser here or 3-foot riser, little stage, where the camera had a good full view from head to toes, then you would use full. But more than likely you will use half in your environment. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like with tracking, I'm here in presenter mode. I will enable the tracking and oops, I want to control, give you a little better view there of what's being recorded. So it's actually looking for me, a human outline. It's latched onto me, and now as I walk about the room, it will follow me around. Okay. Even if I were to walk towards the camera, the camera lens is probably at about 5'10", so there's not much of a dip. So if I walk towards it, it's probably not going to dip down. But if I were to dip down myself, then it will actually come down here. So click to track as mentioned. So this red box is only seen on the web UI. It will not be seen on the output of the camera. So if you're connected USB or HDMI, you will not see the red box. The red box is there for reference on the web UI. So this is where it'll just follow me around nice and smooth, no matter where I go, even if someone else were to walk in front of me. It will stay latched onto me. And then I could select that second person that's in blue, click on them, or use the switch button on the remote. So I'll turn that off. Zone mode. So here we are in zone mode. And as mentioned before, you have either 2, 3, or 4 different blocks or zones that you can create. And we're using preset 6, 7, 8, and 9. I have nothing in 9 because of my space that I have. My room is 13 feet wide, so I really couldn't use that 4th preset really. But the idea is that we create these presets, right? So this is the good morning student shot. There's a whiteboard here. We can discuss what we're gonna cover for the day, for the week, the semester, what have you. Expectations of the students. So it's as easy as, excuse me, as just using these controls, right? You zoom in, zoom out to what makes sense, what you want to capture. And then once satisfied, you select save. And then once you hit save, this thumbnail down here will give you a little visual representation of what that preset looks like. You say, okay, let me come over here. You can pan over. I already had preset 7 set up, but the idea is that you just kind of get into your spot where you want it, what makes sense, and then select save. And then over here, number 8, I zoomed out, right? And so let's pretend we wanted to talk about art appreciation or perhaps a project on leadership. Let's get that there. That we wanted to discuss, that's maybe due in 3 or 4 weeks. Or anything, or it could be an interactive flat panel, an IFP back there that that you want to capture that as I walk to it and we discuss whatever the subject matter may be. So again, position it, hit save, you're done. Say, okay, that looks all look good. And then down here at the bottom, we have the tracking sensitivity and the time to return to tracking point. That's the same as what we had in presenter mode. The only difference is that now you have an option of where the camera returns to, right? So if for some reason, I walk out of the room, the camera's waiting, looking for me, after 5 seconds, it's going to return to tracking point preset 6. You could have it go to another preset, which may make better sense because maybe I'm standing in the middle of the room rather than off to, stage right. So I have the ability to say, well, I'd rather have it go back to preset 7 or preset 8. If you're in 4-block mode, then you can select, 6 through 9. And if you're in 2 blocks, then it's only 6 and 7. But I'm in 3, and I want to return back to 6 in case tracking gets lost. So I'll show you what that looks like. Go to tracking mode, go to zone, and I'll go to on. I will say currently, with this version of firmware, the only way to switch between presenter and zone is via the web UI. So here I am in zone mode. I just turned it on. Good morning, students. As I walk over here, it'll kick over. Or maybe today's topic of conversation is we're going to learn about colors in English and Spanish. And then as I walk over here, it'll kick over to preset number 8 and art appreciation, right? So it's kicking over automatically to a preset. And this is where, it could be a whiteboard. The camera's not trying to keep me centered to the frame. because it's just sitting at a preset. It's only going to move to the preset as I move about the room. So as I come over here, this is a learning station, right? And then we're going to talk about colores en español y inglés. And then we come back here, back to the, finish the day or what have you. And then from the remote, you could just disable. You could disable the tracking from here. So I'll say disable, it's off. And then the web UI will actually update as well and show off as it did here. So here there might be an occasion where we may be in a discussion of what version of firmware you're at. So this is where you would find that information. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. If you go to the System tab, it will show you the model name, the IP address, the serial number, MAC address, and the firmware version. I'm currently running a beta version of 17. It's looking pretty good. But there might be an instance where you need to upgrade it, and this is where you would come to do that. You choose the file, and then once it's chosen, then you would select upgrade. There is a selection here to reset the factory default. Maybe there were some changes you were kind of messing with, the image processing, exposure, and you just couldn't, even though we have a default selection here, you just couldn't get the image back, or there's just some weirdness in the camera. Then we probably recommend just doing a quick reset to factory default. Kind of clears out those values. So here's another ability to the status on-screen display, right? You can actually enable, disable it from here as well. And then if at a future date you wanted to upgrade the camera to support NDI, which is a new tech, video audio technology, it's video over IP, then you would put in the activation key here as well. Presets up to 256, as I mentioned. I have this camera set for like preset number 3. This is roughly a 10x optical zoom to kind of give you an idea of the quality of the image. Give you a little better idea. Now remember, this web UI video quality is going to be less than what you're actually getting out of the camera. So PTZ Management Software, I'm going to close this out. Once installed, it's we'll send you a zip file. Once installed, you should find it here under AVer information, and then AVer PTZ Management. So it's asking me for login. The default, I believe, is admin. Yep. And right now it's scanning the network to see what cameras are out there, right? So imagine this is room 313, 310, and this is another room. But quickly at a glance, you can see what cameras are online. So you have different views. You have a single camera view. So if you wanted to see a little more information about that room, a little closer up, you could do a 4x, where you're seeing 4 cameras at a time, and then this is 16. So a 4x4, so 16 separate cameras at one time. And again, up to 128 of these cameras. So say you did wanted to do a quick check on this room, you would select that camera, and over here you could have some quick, pan tilt controls, call up a preset just to see if it's working properly. So if you were to get a call or something that something wasn't working right, then you could quickly at a glance kind of see here what's going on with the cameras. So here's your setup. You can add your users. You can add your devices, your cameras. You can group them, add them. Shows you a quick status. if they're powered on. I can add admin users or just user privileges. So I logged in as an admin, so I have the ability to add, edit, and delete. If you logged in as user credentials, you would not have this, right? So you would not have add, edit, or delete. Same likewise here, you would not have the ability to edit or set this up. So if I said setup, it actually brings me to the web page of that camera. I'll exit out of there. Let's go here, system. Just shows you the version number we're at, 1.1, 1007. Oh, I didn't get 8 yet. So 1008 is coming next week. Snapshot folder, you can actually take a snapshot of the cameras here. So that's what this little button here does, snapshot, and it shows you the location of where that went. Setup, management, this gives you the ability to look at what version of firmware is on the camera. So if you had a doubt or just want to do a quick check, you can see here I'm running a couple beta versions, and then I'm also running a release version here on this PTZ. You also have the ability to reboot, obviously if the camera still is not totally locked up. You could send a reboot command from here. Likewise, you could actually do a firmware update and push it out. You already have the latest version, so that's good. So under management, you have the ability to actually check the firmware of the version. So from camera management, you have the ability to check the camera firmware version and to see what each camera may have. You could also do a firmware update from here as well. Then exit. So this concludes our video on taking a deeper dive on configuring the TR310 camera, either via the web UI or the camera remote for presets, as well as putting your camera on the network, choosing the appropriate web browser, and some configuration tips on the presenter and zone mode of the TR310. Thank you and good luck.